Ooh, this one's going to sting a little bit because on February 13th, 2026, Saturn will cross into Aries officially. I'm not talking about just a little preview this time. This is not just like a retrograde happening in Saturn and Aries. No, Saturn is in Aries and will stay there until April of 2028. That is 2.5 years of the planet that governs consequences, maturity, and earned authority, meeting the sign of raw instinct, initiation, and the self. We are not getting ready for this. We are standing in it right here, right now. And if you were born between 1996 and 1999, well, this is your first Saturn return, at least the first Saturn return you're aware of. If you were born between 1967 and 1969, well, this is your second Saturn return. And if you have Aries anywhere in your birth chart, well, you are about to have a very specific conversation with a part of yourself you have been avoiding since childhood. But even if none of this applies to you, you are going to feel this. Saturn changing signs is like the teacher changing at the front of the classroom. Different energy, different rules, different consequences for not paying attention. And here's what nobody tells you about Saturn in Aries is that it feels like being asked to sprint uphill while carrying a boulder and then still have enough breath left to reflect on why you're even doing it in the first place. Saturn wants you to slow down, to plan, to test and refine, and Aries wants you to act on instinct, to start immediately, to trust your adrenaline. And this is the entire astrological assignment we're about to embark on. The test of our true courage. And look, we've been in Saturn in Pisces since March of 2023, 3 years of that energy. And I want to be honest with you, those 3 years broke something open in all of us, a lot of us. And for me, it showed up as this bone deep exhaustion that no amount of sleep could ever touch. I would wake up tired. I would finish a workday and still feel like I was treading underwater. I kept thinking that I was doing something wrong, that I needed a better routine or stricter boundaries or a different supplement stack. And then I started noticing the same exhaustion showing up in every single chart reading I did. People crying on Zoom calls, apologizing for being too much, asking if the astrology could just tell them when it would get easier. And I realized we were all swimming in the same collective fatigue, this grief that nobody could quite name, but everyone was carrying. And that was Saturn in Pisces, the hospice nurse, really, the one who sits with you while something dies and does not try to make it comfortable, who does not tell you it's going to be okay, who just stays with you. That's what Saturn in Pisces was all about. And now we're stepping into fire. Saturn in Aries asks a completely different question, where Pisces asks us, what must you release? Aries asks, what are you going to build now with your own two hands, starting from nothing? So today we are going to honor what we just lived through, because you cannot step into the fire if you're still carrying a shit ton of water. Then we're going to look at what Saturn in Aries actually means, what the historical pattern tells us, and what you can do with your time and your body and your choices to work with this energy instead of just endure it. Okay. So let me paint a picture first of Saturn in Pisces so you can locate yourself in it, because March of 2023 through today, 3 years, we've had this Saturn and Pisces energy. And I do not need to tell you what those 3 years felt like. You lived them, but naming them, of course, matters, because we need to understand what we're leaving in order to step into what's coming. The first thing is that the boundaries dissolved. One of the loudest themes was that truth itself started blurring. AI went from novelty to everywhere. ChatGPT became ubiquitous, and suddenly the line between what is human and what is generated started dissolving in real time. You could not tell anymore. Deepfakes proliferated the interwebs. The World Economic Forum even named misinformation as the number one short term global risk in 2024. Post truth even became a phrase people used with a straight face. All of a sudden, these algorithmic rabbit holes created separate realities. And I watched people I love disappear into conspiracy worlds, and trying to argue facts felt useless because we were literally living inside of different realities in our heads. At the same time, identity itself loosened, of course. Gender got more fluid in public conversation. People started experimenting with pronouns, expression, labels, the rejection of labels, even. And the internet made it possible to reinvent yourself daily. Who you are offline, who you are online, your avatar, your brand, your higher self, your trauma self, your main account, your burner account. Very much Neptune and Pisces energy for sure, which was also saying, sure, all of that can be true. All the while, our screen time soared. We started recording everything. Sometimes it felt like we were watching ourselves have an experience instead of just having it. There's this weird simulation feeling that really came online where reality itself felt like a filter. And that's Pisces territory, dissolved edges, no sharp lines around where you end and where everything begins. Now, the shadow work we were forced to confront as well was very real during this transit. And while the external boundaries were dissolving, our internal ones were collapsing too. Mental health became the thing we could not stop talking about. The WHO said that the pandemic's mental health fallout was the greatest threat since World War II. And the US Surgeon General even issued an advisory on loneliness. Oxford, their word of the year for 2025 was rage bait, which tells you everything about where we were emotionally. Exhausted, overstimulated, collapsing under the weight. Stress levels were higher than they were during COVID. Credit card debt hit $1.2 trillion, dollars, all the while democracy continues to crumble underneath us. Trust is at an all time low. And inside of all of that, so many of us were just trying to hold it all together, trying to work, trying to show up for the people who we love, trying to care about our own lives while the world felt like it was dissolving around us. And I caught myself during this transit doing something I did not expect. I stopped reading the news for a few months because I genuinely did not think my nervous system could handle one more headline. And then I felt ashamed about that, of course, which made it worse. Like, what kind of person just opts out? What kind of astrologer stops paying attention? And that shame that I should be able to handle this, that is Saturn in Pisces shadow, the martyr, the one who collapses under the weight and then apologizes for it. And the spiritual world was not exempt from this. We saw compassion fatigue everywhere, healers burning out, people collapsing into spiritual bypass using love and light language to avoid accountability, to avoid feeling the mess of this world. Conspirituality movements also twisted wellness into conspiracy pipelines as well. I watched people I respected slide into spaces where visionary language was so spiritually wrapped around denial and harm, but also the grief work, you know, alongside all that dissolution and collapse, something else was happening. Saturn and Pisces also taught us how to grieve collectively. We learned to sit with endings that did not have perfect closure. We learned that sometimes the only thing we can do is feel the whole thing and keep breathing. And a lot of spiritual communities started naming spiritual bypass as well out loud. For the first time, we started asking harder questions about what our practices were actually for. Were we using them to avoid reality or metabolize it? That question really mattered. And it is part of what we're bringing forward, what we get to bring forward. So that is what we're leaving, the dream time, the dissolution, the grief we are still carrying in our body, the illusions we were watching collapse in front of our very eyes, these versions of self that did not survive these last 3 years. And if you can, really pause for a second. Put her hand on your chest, all right? Let's take a breath for a little while here. I just word vomited so much astrology at you. Let's take a deep breath here and like ask yourself, like, what part of the last 3 years are you still holding on to that you need to set down before you can move forward? Because whether we like it or not, Saturn is entering Aries on February 13th, and the energy is going to be really different as we explore the answer to this question. Where Pisces dissolved, Aries builds. Where Pisces grieved, Aries acts. Where Pisces asks you to surrender, Aries asks you to stand up and to claim your space. And the metaphor I keep coming back to is apprenticeship for this transit. Saturn is the mentor who does not hand you the answer. Aries is the apprentice who wants to be trusted with fire before they have learned how to bank the coals and how to keep the flames steady. And the apprentice has to earn their mastery through repetition, failure, practice, discipline, through showing up even when it's boring, through starting over even when they mess up. Like, nobody crowns you. You become someone who can be trusted with fire. And here's the thing, Saturn is in its fall in Aries, right? Which means this placement is uncomfortable for both of them. Saturn wants structure, discipline, slow accumulation of skill. Aries wants spontaneous action, immediate results, trust, and instinct. And this friction is what builds you the tension between I want to go now and but have you thought this all the way through is the entire teaching of this transit, because you cannot microwave a revolution. You cannot same day deliver your way into becoming someone with integrity, with skill, with a spine that holds under pressure. This transit is about the slow build, the unglamorous repetition of it all, the daily practice that nobody sees, the private failures that teach you more than public wins and accolades and recognition. And this transit is about identity at a bone level, not your resume, not your titles, not the version of you that looks good on Instagram. The self you become when all of that falls away, when nobody is watching, when there is no external reward for showing up. That is the person Saturn in Aries is asking you to meet and to build from. Now, every transit, of course, has a shadow and a gift, and Saturn in Aries is no exception. On the shadow side of things, we're likely to see reckless action without strategy, burning hot and fast and burning out, self importance disguised as leadership as well, and a hyper independence that refuses all help, all collaboration, all wisdom from people who have walked the path before. You know, there's also a fear of failure here, a fear of failure so intense, you never start anything to begin with. So you stay frozen in planning mode forever, waiting for the perfect conditions that never come. On the gift side of things, if we bring forward the grief work of Pisces, right? There is courageous action here rooted in emotional clarity. This is the process of learning to surrender to your own authority without needing that constant validation from the outside, becoming someone who can hold steady when everything else is panicking. This is the process of knowing when to fight and when to conserve your energy. There is one more layer that actually makes this moment particularly intense, of course, because on February 20th, just 1 week from today, about Saturn and Neptune meet at 0 degrees of Aries. And this is a once in a 36-year conjunction happening at the first degree of the zodiac, all right? The ignition point. Saturn says, prove it, commit to it, build it from scratch. And Neptune says, trust it, dream it, channel it from source, believe in what you cannot see yet. And when they meet at 0 degrees of Aries, we are talking about a new long cycle of what dreams are we willing to build in the real world with real consequences and with our bodies on the line. That is the assignment we are all standing inside. Now, before we get into what you can actually do with this, I want to give you a brief historical mirror, because the last time Saturn was in Aries was 1996 to 1999. And before that, 1967 to 1969. 1967 and 1969, we had the Stonewall riots literally kicking off the gay liberation movement. Martin Luther King Jr. was unfortunately assassinated. Tommy Smith raised his fist at the Olympics. And the counterculture movement that was happening was not just people protesting in the streets, it was found in actually building structures. Movement organizations formed. The Fair Housing Act passed. Woodstock happened. I'm talking about bold individuals laying disciplined foundations for change that outlasted them. And also violence, unfortunately. Aries is the god of war. So there's backlash here. People paying with their lives for standing up. And from 1996 to 1999, well, we had the Good Friday Agreement, which ended decades of violence in Northern Ireland through years of disciplined negotiation. Google was also founded, new structures built from nothing in a literal garage. And the Matrix movie came out with its red pill, blue pill choice about waking up to reality even when it's uncomfortable. Also, Bill Clinton was impeached during this transit. So I'm talking about accountability, power, masculinity under public scrutiny. So you see the pattern here? Individuals standing up, new structures being built, civil rights expanding because people risked everything. A lot of firsts happening during this transit, of course, because Aries is first. Boundary breaking moments that require both courage and stamina, and also the price, the backlash, the martyrs. The question Saturn in Aries is always asking is, who are you willing to be? And what are you willing to fight for? And the answer cannot just be a feeling. It cannot just be a value you hold on to. It has to be something you are building with your time, your body, and your choices. Something you can point to and say, that, that thing, I made that. I did that. And speaking of time and choices, if you were born between 1996 and 1999 or between 1967 and 1969, this transit is not just happening around you, baby. It's happening directly in your natal Saturn. You are in a Saturn return. And for first timers, this is a transition from youth into full blown adulthood. And it is not gentle. There's a reason why I have Saturn tattooed on my arm, because he taught me many lessons. Saturn returns strip away everything that was never meant for you. Relationships that were based on convenience or comfort rather than truth. Jobs that were just for now, that you stayed in way too long, identities you were performing to keep other people comfortable, to avoid disappointing your family, to fit into a world that was never built for the real you. And the question is, who am I really with this transit? Not who my parents think I am, not who my partner needs me to be, not what social media told me I should be. Who am I when all of that falls away? And because this is happening in Aries, the battleground is identity itself. Your independence versus external expectations, your anger as a part of the curriculum as well, learning to work with the energy instead of suppressing it or letting it destroy your relationships. Patience is the hardest lesson here because Aries does not have patience built in. So the things that keep you small are going to be amplified here. If you've been building authentically, of course, if you have been making choices that align with who you actually are, well, then you are going to level up during this Saturn return. And if you haven't, well, then things get stripped away. And that can feel very brutal, of course. Breakups, job losses, health crisis that force you to slow down. But whatever gets stripped away, regardless, was never yours in the first place. And you really got to trust that with a Saturn return. Now, for my second timers, the energy is different, but equally potent as well. This is the transition into eldership. This is about legacy, about mentorship as well, about asking, what wisdom am I passing down? And what kind of ancestor do I want to become? You were born during one of the most culturally revolutionary moments in modern history. Vietnam, Stonewall, the counterculture, building new structures while the old world fought back. And your second Saturn return is a call to remember that, to bring forward the wisdom you earned between your first and second return. This is a moment to really stop proving yourself and to start offering what you know. The world needs your steadiness right now. It needs your pattern recognition, your lived experience of making it through the fire beforehand. So if you have a minute, all my Saturn return peoples, really ask yourself here, what version of you is dying right now so someone more honest can live in this world? And just sit with that thought for a second. Of course, you don't need an answer. You just need to question what is changing and how can I embrace this change during this major chapter in my life? Okay, now let's get a little practical because astrology is beautiful and all to talk about, but we still have lives to live. We still have to wake up tomorrow and deal with the emails and the dishes and our own nervous systems. So, here are some tools to help everyone navigate Saturn and Aries, okay? Things you can actually do with this energy between now and April of 2028. The first thing is identity work. I want you to write down who you are when all those titles are gone. Not your job, not your relationship status, of course, not your degrees or your accomplishments, just you. Do this as often as you can during this transit because the answers will change. And watching it teaches you something about the shedding and what is emerging from that shedding. Then I want you to make a list of your top 10 values, things you actually care about, not the things you think you should care about either. If you can cut it down to 3 values, amazing. Now, every decision you make from here on out gets measured against these 3 values. And if you don't align with them, if whatever it is you're doing, if it does not align, you do not do it. Simple as that. Number 2, anger, anger, anger. Saturn in Aries is going to bring up a lot of your anger. And the work here is not to shame it or suppress it or to be more spiritually mature by pretending you are beyond your anger. The work is to study your anger. When that anger flares up, ask, what boundary is getting crossed here? What truth am I ignoring? What value is asking to be reclaimed? You can process it physically, of course, the answer of this by stomping or shaking or pushing against a wall with your full strength. Whatever you can do, move with anger and then sit with whatever is underneath it all. Anger is usually protecting something that matters to you. So find out what that is and then move forward. Really write down your non negotiables here on a piece of paper and tape it to your bathroom mirror if you can. Things you will not compromise on, things you will not bend on to keep the peace, and review it as often as you can. Are you honoring these values or are you bending yourself into shapes to avoid conflict and confrontation? Number 3, accountability. Pick one project, okay? Just one project, not 5 or 10. We don't need any of that. Like just one, and break it down into milestones that you can actually measure. Set a weekly check in with yourself if you can. Same day, same time, every single week, and ask yourself, what did I commit myself to? Did I follow through? Where did I avoid difficulty? What hard conversation am I postponing? And if you can, find an accountability partner. Like, really do this work. Someone who will check in with you weekly and listen to your honest updates without trying to fix it or save you or make you feel better, of course. Saturn really works better with a witness, someone who sees you showing up, who notices you when you're not showing up as well, and calls you out on it with love, of course, and compassion. Number 4 here, probably the most important one, embodiment. Saturn likes structure. So, whatever form of embodiment practices you can really do on a consistent basis, that Saturn like structure to the breath while also calming that Aries reactivity, any tool you can do on a consistent basis to help with that conversation, chef's kiss. You will love yourself for that. Do something physical first in the morning that reminds you that you are here, you are real, you have a body, and you're not just a brain floating through each task. Number 5, an energy audit. I want you to make a list of every single commitment, every relationship, every obligation you're currently carrying, everything. Then rate them 1 to 10 based on whether it drains you or fuels you. And I want you to be honest about this. Anything under a 5 needs to be renegotiated or released. You do not have infinite energy, and Saturn in Aries is going to ask you to spend it on what actually matters, on what you're actually building towards, not on maintaining structures that died years ago. We don't need that. We need the vessel clear. We need the vessel clean, okay? And lastly, here, the no practice, okay? For 1 week, or as often as you feel called to, say no to one small request per day that you would normally say yes to out of habit or people pleasing or fear of disappointing someone else. And really notice what happens in your body when you say no. Notice what does not fall apart. Notice who respects the boundary and who tries to negotiate with it. That tells you something. And look, regardless of any of these exercises, what this moment is really asking you is this: what is the one thing you keep circling back to, even when you try to ignore it? What is yours to build? Okay. And you do not need an immediate answer for this. You might get one word or a face or an image or just a sensation. And that is enough for now. Aries is about instinct. You're just starting the conversation here. And part of the starting of this conversation, it always begins with a question that you probably already know the answer to. The magic is in the work you're avoiding. And that's what Saturn in Aries is all about. So, Saturn in Aries is going to be with us through April of 2028, 2.5 years of this transit, long enough to build something real, long enough to fail multiple times and start over again, long enough to become someone different than who you are right now. It's a beautiful gift, really. This apprenticeship is going to be uncomfortable. The mentor is not going to tell you you're doing great when you're not. And the work is truly going to require more patience than you think you have, more discipline than feels natural, and more honesty with yourself than you're used to. You're gonna want to quit. You're gonna want to skip ahead to the part where you're already good at it. You're gonna want someone to just hand you the answer to tell you exactly what to do and when to do it. But nobody earns mastery that way. Nobody does. You earn it by showing up, failing, adjusting, and showing up again. And by choosing one thing and staying with it, even when it is boring, even when nobody is watching, even when you're not getting the external validation for it, all right? This is what happens when you become someone who can be trusted with the fire because you learned how to tend to it. Not just to start those fires, but also how to end those fires as well. Stay in your body as much as possible during this transit. Trust what you know. And remember, you are not here to just survive this transit. You are here to be changed by it. We are here to grow. And let me tell you, sometimes the biggest step is that first step. And nobody knows that first step better than Aries energy. Be courageous, be brave, be bold, and let's do this shit. We will not give up. We will not surrender. We will be honest. We will be authentic. We will be accountable to each other and ourselves. And if we stay true to that, trust and believe, the universe, she got us. All right, my love? Bye for now. Thank you for being here. If you would like to join my private membership community, please check out the collective. It's down below. I'm doing a 30-day free trial right now where you can try on this private community. There's courses, personalized readings, so many things packed up in this offer in the description below. Check it out. If it's for you, great. If it's not, you can drop it. No pressure, no hard feelings. Lots of love to you all. Thank you for being here. More on this Aquarius eclipse coming up very soon on February 17th. Excited to drop a video on that.